Are Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito right about what they said about heaven that was recorded today in the news? I'm a big fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito, love the movie Twins, but I was disheartened to hear some comments that they both said today on heaven. A Fox News article quotes Schwarzenegger as saying this in response to the question about heaven. He said, "It reminds me of Howard Stern's question to me," Schwarzenegger recalled. "Tell me, Governor, what happens to us when we die?" I said, "Nothing. You're 6 feet under. Anyone that tells you something else is an explicative liar." I said, "We don't know what happens with the soul and all this spiritual stuff that I'm not an expert in, but I know that the body, as we see each other now, we will never see each other again like that." And then DeVito said, "We deteriorate." To which Schwarzenegger responded, "Except in some fantasy, when people talk about, I will see them again in heaven, it sounds so good, but the reality is that we won't see each other again after we're gone. That's the sad part. I know people will feel comfortable with death, but I don't." So is Schwarzenegger right, and is DeVito right about their view of heaven? Well, Schwarzenegger says he grew up Catholic. He went through catechism and all that, but doesn't seem to believe what the Catholic Church teaches. So what would have to be the case for Schwarzenegger and DeVito to be right in denying that there's a heaven? Well, it would deny Christianity outright. It would deny a lot of religions that teach that there's a heaven. But of course, you want to focus it here on just Christianity. So what would it mean to say that there is no heaven? Well, it would mean God doesn't exist. It would mean the Bible is false. And it would mean that Jesus, of course, is not God. So how would you respond to something like this? If you're talking to a friend about this story, or you just want to know how to respond to something like this in general? Well, if I were talking to Schwarzenegger one-on-one, which I would love to do, I would ask him, why do you think that? Because he doesn't really explain that, not in this news story. Maybe he did somewhere else where it's quoted from, but it's not really in this news story about why he thinks what he does about heaven and the afterlife. I did think it was interesting. He said he is not an expert, but he's making very authoritative and kind of closed-door statements about this. But this is just a matter of fact the way it is. Well, so I would want to know, first, do you believe that God exists? I don't know if he does. It doesn't seem like he does in this article. I don't know. But how do we answer this kind of question about heaven doesn't exist or isn't real, or we're not going to see our loved ones again after death? Well, we would want to do what I think is the best apologetic method out there, which is the classical model, and that is to show that first, God exists, and then the Bible is reliable, and then says that Jesus claimed to be God, and that Jesus proved he was God through his sinless life, fulfillment of prophecies, and ultimately his resurrection. So I'm not going to go into a full-blown Christian apologetic here, but here's what you say. We're going to have more videos on that coming out. And so here's why I think God exists. I do have one video at this point as to why I think God exists. And that was setting up our discussion of attributes that we're doing on God. And that's looking at the first way of Thomas Aquinas. So there's lots of arguments and reasons why Christians and theists in general think that God exists. Bottom line, if there is something that can't account for itself, like the physical universe, in my opinion, is changing, its material is contingent, that is, it doesn't have to exist in and of itself, it really can't explain its own existence, then those kinds of things that are material, changing, temporal, all that kind of stuff that can't account for its own existence, you either have to have one thing causing another thing ad infinitum into the past, or there's got to be some stopping point where you've got some ultimate cause that itself is not caused. And I think that's what we have to deal with here with regards to the nature of reality and God's existence. There are really good reasons to show that a creator exists that made the universe. If the universe is temporal, then the creator can't be temporal. It's got to be something non-temporal that accounts for the universe. If the universe is material and changing, then if there's something about being material and being changing, then the creator couldn't be those things either. So if we could establish God's existence, which I think we can do, then, as C.S. Lewis says, we cannot guarantee that miracles are not possible. So if we can show God exists, and that pretty much goes to show that miracles are possible. Well, there are good reasons for thinking that the Bible's claims are reliable for many reasons. One, the claims are verifiable in and of themselves, and two, there have been many miracles across both the Old and New Testaments to demonstrate and authenticate the message of the prophets and the apostles. And we can show that history, geography, archaeology demonstrates and verifies the claims of the Bible. And it also says, because they think the Bible is reliable, it says that Jesus claimed to be God. Now, anybody can claim to be God. That's not really a big deal. You or I can claim to be God. But not just anybody can demonstrate that he's God by doing miracles. And so on one occasion, he told someone, your sins are forgiven. And the religious leaders of the day said, well, who can forgive sins but God alone? And Jesus said, well, what's easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or to say to this paralytic, pick up your mat and walk? But that you may know that the Son of Man has authority, pick up your mat and walk. So he kind of put his money where his mouth was, as it were, and demonstrated his authority and ultimately deity by doing a miracle, ultimately in predicting and accomplishing his resurrection. So if God exists, miracles are possible. If miracles are possible, then they can be used to demonstrate and authenticate a messenger of God, a prophet, an apostle. And if history, archaeology, and so forth can demonstrate that the claims of the Bible are reliable, then it can be shown to be reliable. And since it is reliable and it claims that Jesus said he was God, then we have to take those claims seriously, and as well as the life of Jesus, his miracles he performed, his ultimate death and resurrection that he said would happen. And the proof for the resurrection is very good. I have another video on that as well, so go and check that out. But if those things are true, then no disrespect to Schwarzenegger and DeVito, but that we do have good reasons for believing that heaven is real. Not to knock off a book title, but there are good reasons to believe that there really is a heaven, that we really will spend eternity with God, that we really will see our loved ones again. And so this is a good opportunity if you're looking for a way to start a conversation with somebody. Let's say you have somebody at work that you want to share your faith with, somebody, one of your friends you play golf with or whatever, but you don't know how to share your faith. And I asked him, well, did you see the story about Schwarzenegger and DeVito? This is really because people are interested in what celebrities say. I mean, I like DeVito and Schwarzenegger, so I was interested in what they had to say as well as disappointed in what they had to say. But in a conversation, you can ask questions. Just reading a story, you can't ask questions. So I would love to ask them, why do you think this? That's a great tactic, by the way. And doing apologetics or just having logical conversations. So why do you think this? To asking questions forces somebody to deal with what you're saying and respond to it. If you're just preaching a message or speaking whatever, people can tune you out and ignore you. But if you ask them a question, then they're forced to answer you. So are there good reasons for thinking that heaven is real or that it really exists? Yes, because we believe that God exists. There are good reasons for that. Miracles are possible. The Bible is reliable. And Jesus claimed and demonstrated his deity with his sinless life, fulfillment of a lot of prophecies, and ultimately in predicting and fulfilling his own death and resurrection. And if that's all true, then Christianity is true and heaven is real. And if that's true, we'll be back.